A veteran and his dog saved an elder in the rain, then inherited his forgotten hotel. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get into today's incredible story. Jack Thornton had never expected his life to change in a storm. The rain pounded down in sheets, the wind howling like a living thing, as Jack trudged along the muddy road, his faithful German shepherd, Scout, by his side. Jack, a man in his early 40s with a weathered face and a history marked by years of service in the army, had learned to carry burdens without complaint. But tonight, even the storm seemed to carry the weight of a long-forgotten promise. Jack had been walking for hours, taking shelter whenever he could, his coat soaked through and his boots heavy with the weight of the relentless downpour. Scout's paws splashed through puddles, his ears pinned back against the wind. Jack and Scout had been living on the edge of survival for months now. Jack had lost everything, his family, his home, and any sense of purpose that once drove him. It had all slipped through his fingers after returning from the war. But as the storm raged on, something in Jack's gut told him this night would be different. His instincts, honed over years of serving in dangerous places, urged him forward. They were near the outskirts of the town when Scout stopped, ears perked, body stiffening as if sensing something in the air. Jack followed Scout's gaze, his own eyes scanning the shadows, trying to make sense of the flickering light in the distance. It was faint, but unmistakable. A single lamp was shining through the window of a small house ahead. The flickering light made it seem like someone was waiting inside. Jack's heart skipped a beat. As they approached, he could hear muffled sounds, scratching, and then a weak voice, calling for help. Without thinking, Jack broke into a run, Scout right behind him, his paws thudding on the wet earth. Reaching the porch, Jack saw an elderly man, his frail body hunched over, struggling to get up after a fall. The storm had knocked over a tree branch, pinning him beneath it. The man's face was pale, his breathing labored. Jack didn't hesitate. He grabbed the branch and pulled with all his might, lifting it off the man's chest. The elderly man gasped for air, his eyes wide with fear and gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered, barely able to speak. Jack steadied him, helping him to his feet. "You're going to be okay," Jack said softly, his voice steady despite the storm raging around them. Scout stood by, his tail wagging gently as if sensing the relief in the air. Jack helped the elderly man into the house, where they took refuge from the storm. The man's name was Edward Grant, a retired hotel owner who had lived alone in the small house for years. As the rain continued to pour outside, Edward shared his story, how his once thriving hotel had been abandoned after his health failed, and how he had isolated himself from the world, too proud to ask for help. But that night, the storm had forced him to face his vulnerabilities. "I've lost everything," Edward said, his voice trembling. "But you, young man, you saved me." Jack, despite his own struggles, felt a warmth in his chest as he listened. He had not expected anything in return for helping the man. But Edward had one more surprise for him, something that would change the course of Jack's life forever. The rain continued to fall outside, tapping gently on the windows, as Jack sat by the fire in Edward Grant's small living room. He glanced over at the elderly man, who was seated in a worn armchair, his eyes distant but filled with gratitude. Jack had never expected his night to turn out like this. But here he was, sharing a quiet moment with a man who had been lost in his own world for years. The storm outside seemed to mirror the stillness in the room, each raindrop a reminder of the quiet, broken lives that existed just out of sight. Edward's voice broke the silence. "You've done more for me than anyone ever has, Jack," he said, his eyes softening as he looked at Jack. "I don't know how to repay you." Jack shifted uncomfortably in his seat, feeling the weight of his past and the emptiness that had followed him for so long. He had never been one to ask for anything in return, especially not from a stranger. "You don't have to repay me," Jack said, his voice low but steady. "It's just what I do, what I was trained to do." There was a pause as both men sat quietly, the crackling of the fire filling the gaps between words. After a moment, Edward slowly looked up, his gaze growing more intense. "I want to give you something," he said, his voice firm despite his age. Jack raised an eyebrow, unsure of where this conversation was going. Edward continued, his hands trembling slightly as he reached into his coat pocket. He pulled out an old, rusted key, placing it gently into Jack's palm. "This is the key to my hotel," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "The hotel I once owned, the one I built with my own hands. I want you to have it." Jack stared at the key in his hand, confused. "Your hotel?" he asked, his mind racing. "But I thought you said it was abandoned. Why would you want me to have it?" Edward smiled faintly, as if the weight of his decision was finally lifting. "It's been abandoned for years, yes. But it's still there, hidden in plain sight. And it's waiting for someone who can bring it back to life. I failed it, Jack. I don't have the strength anymore. But you have something inside you, something I lost a long time ago. You can bring it back." Jack was stunned. He had heard of the old hotel before, but it was little more than a legend, a forgotten place that people whispered about, but rarely spoke of. It had been left to rot after Edward's health failed, and no one in the town had ever dared to take on the massive project of restoring it. "I don't know anything about hotels," Jack muttered, still holding the key in his hand. Edward leaned forward, his eyes locking with Jack's. "It's not about the hotel, Jack. It's about what it represents. It's about giving you a chance to rebuild, to start over. I've seen you in action. You have the heart of a soldier, and that's what this place needs. You and that dog of yours, you've both got the kind of loyalty and strength it takes to make this work." Jack didn't know what to say. He wasn't sure if it was the storm or the fire or just the overwhelming weight of the situation, but he felt something stir inside him, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. For the first time in months, he thought maybe, just maybe, he could rebuild his life. "I'll take the key," Jack said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Edward smiled again, this time with a sense of relief that seemed to lift the weight from his shoulders. "I knew you would," he said, his voice soft but full of trust. "But don't rush into it, Jack. The hotel is a lot more than it seems. There's more to it than you can imagine." Jack nodded slowly, tucking the key into his jacket pocket. The rain continued to pour outside, but inside, for the first time in what felt like forever, Jack could feel something beginning to shift. The storm outside had brought him to Edward's doorstep, but it was the key in his pocket that would open the door to a new life. As he glanced over at Scout, curled up beside the fire, Jack knew that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. The future, once a distant and uncertain idea, now seemed a little bit clearer. The next morning, after the storm had passed and the sky had cleared, Jack set out to find the hotel. He had no idea what to expect, but he knew one thing for sure. This was his chance. He was ready to see what lay behind the crumbling walls of the forgotten building. And maybe, just maybe, it would be the key to unlocking a life he never thought he'd have again. The next morning, Jack and Scout set out early, the sky clear after the storm, and the air fresh with the scent of wet earth and pine. The storm had passed, but its effects were still visible, branches scattered across the ground, puddles reflecting the clear blue above. Jack felt a strange sense of anticipation as he walked down the old, familiar streets, the key still tucked in his jacket pocket, weighing heavily on his mind. The hotel was just a short walk from Edward's house, but every step felt like it took him further into the unknown. As they approached the edge of town, the buildings began to thin, and the road became quieter. It didn't take long before Jack found himself standing before a rusted iron gate, the entrance to the hotel. The structure loomed behind it, old, forgotten, and shrouded in mystery. The large stone walls, weathered by time, stood tall against the bright sunlight, casting long shadows across the ground. The once grand building now looked like a ghost of what it had been, a forgotten relic of a bygone era. Jack stood still for a moment, staring at the locked gate. The key in his pocket felt like it was calling to him, urging him to open the gate and step inside. But he hesitated. The weight of the decision, of the responsibility, pressed down on him. He didn't know anything about running a hotel. He didn't know how to restore a building like this. But something deep within him, something he hadn't felt in a long time, told him to try. Without another word, Jack pulled the key from his pocket and approached the gate. The lock was old, the metal rusty, but the key fit perfectly. With a soft click, the gate creaked open, revealing the overgrown path that led up to the main entrance of the hotel. As Jack stepped onto the grounds, he could feel the silence of the place settling around him. It was as if the hotel had been waiting for someone to bring it back to life, and now that person had arrived. Scout trotted ahead, sniffing the ground as they made their way up the path, the tall grass brushing against their legs. Jack's heart raced as he approached the grand double doors of the hotel. The door handles were tarnished, the wood warped, but they were still standing strong. He reached out and pulled them open, the hinges groaning with age. Inside, the air was thick with dust, the once polished floors now covered with a layer of dirt. The lobby, though still vast and impressive, had fallen into disrepair. Broken chandeliers hung from the ceiling, their crystals long gone. Cobwebs lined the corners, and the wallpaper had started to peel away. But despite the decay, there was something beautiful about the place, something that called out to him. The hotel had a soul, one that had been buried beneath the layers of time and neglect. As Jack stepped inside, he felt a strange sense of purpose take hold of him. This was more than just a building. It was a chance to start over, to rebuild his life. And for the first time in a long time, he felt like he had a reason to keep going. He walked through the lobby, his boots echoing on the marble floors, and stopped in front of the grand staircase that led to the upper floors. The stairs were covered in dust and debris, but Jack could still see the beauty of the craftsmanship beneath. The banister, though chipped and worn, still held a certain elegance. He placed his hand on it and took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the building's history. "We can fix this," Jack said quietly, mostly to himself. Scout gave a low bark, as if agreeing with him. The dog's presence, steady and comforting, reminded Jack that he wasn't alone in this. He had Scout, and he had the hotel, both offering him a new beginning. Jack spent the rest of the day exploring the hotel, moving through each room, taking note of what needed to be repaired and what could be saved. The kitchen was surprisingly intact, though it would need a good cleaning. The dining room, with its high ceilings and large windows, still had the potential to be a beautiful space, even if it was covered in dust. He found the old office, the walls lined with faded portraits of guests who had long since gone. The place was a mess, but it was also a treasure trove of memories, waiting to be uncovered. As the sun began to set, Jack stood on the balcony, looking out over the land. The hotel was a shadow of its former self, but he could see its potential. It was going to take hard work, dedication, and a little bit of faith, but Jack was determined. For the first time in months, he felt a spark of hope. The storm had brought him here, and now, the hotel, this forgotten place, would be his second chance. Scout sat beside him, his tail wagging slowly, as if sensing that they were on the cusp of something big. Jack looked down at the key in his hand and smiled. It wasn't just a key to the hotel, it was the key to his future. As the days passed, Jack began to realize the enormity of the task ahead of him. The hotel, though full of potential, was a shadow of its former self, with rooms that needed complete restoration and a sense of life that had long since faded. But there was something about the place, something that drew him in, like an unfinished story waiting for its next chapter. Jack spent every waking hour working, clearing out debris, sweeping up dust, and trying to bring the hotel back to life. Scout stayed close by, his presence steady and reassuring, as if the dog too understood the importance of what they were doing. At first, the work was overwhelming. The hotel had been neglected for so many years, and Jack didn't have the resources or the knowledge to restore it to its former grandeur. But as he worked, he discovered small things that made him believe in the process. Pieces of old furniture hidden under tarps, beautiful stained glass windows obscured by dirt, and the glimmer of potential in the dark corners of the old building. Slowly, Jack began to piece together a plan. He would start with the basics: cleaning, repairing the roof, and restoring the plumbing. It was a slow process, but with each small victory, Jack felt a sense of accomplishment. There were moments when the weight of the work felt too much to bear, when his body ached and his mind grew tired. But each time he looked at Scout, who was always there, watching him with those intelligent amber eyes, Jack found the strength to keep going. The days blurred together as Jack worked tirelessly, but he also began to meet the people in the town. The small community had long since forgotten the hotel, but they still remembered Edward, and they were curious about Jack's plans for the place. At first, the townspeople were skeptical. The hotel had been abandoned for so long that they didn't think anyone would ever take it on. But as they saw Jack's determination, they started offering their help. Some brought tools, others brought food, and a few even offered to help with the repairs. It was small at first, but soon, Jack found himself surrounded by a group of people who were just as invested in the hotel's revival as he was. Word spread, and the hotel began to take on a life of its own. People came to see what was happening, and some even offered their services in exchange for a place to stay once the hotel was up and running. Jack was overwhelmed by the support, but he also felt a deep sense of gratitude. He hadn't expected much from the town, but it was clear that they were starting to believe in the hotel's future again. One evening, as Jack was sitting outside the hotel, taking a break from the work, a familiar figure approached. It was Edward. The elderly man had been coming by regularly to check on Jack's progress, offering advice and sharing stories about the hotel's glory days. Jack had learned to listen carefully to Edward's tales, each one offering a glimpse into the hotel's past, and sometimes even a hint about what lay hidden beneath its floors. Edward had become more than just a mentor. He had become a friend. "You're doing well, Jack," Edward said, his voice soft but full of pride. "I never thought I'd see the day when someone would bring this place back to life." Jack smiled, looking up at the hotel's towering structure. "I couldn't have done it without the people here," he said. "They've been amazing." Edward nodded, his eyes twinkling with something that Jack couldn't quite place. "This hotel has always been more than just bricks and mortar. It's always had a soul, Jack, and you're giving it back its heart." Jack's smile faded slightly as he looked at Edward. "You know, I've been wondering. I don't know if this place is just a project or if it's something more. It feels like it's calling to me, like it's meant to be something important." Edward's gaze grew thoughtful. "Sometimes, things are meant to be, Jack. But it's up to us to recognize it. You've already given this hotel a second chance, and in doing so, you're giving yourself one too." Jack felt a wave of emotion wash over him. He hadn't realized just how much he had come to care about the hotel, how much it had come to mean to him. It was no longer just about the work. It was about the future, about the possibilities that lay ahead. As the evening sky darkened and the stars began to twinkle above, Jack knew that this hotel, once forgotten, was now his life's work. And though the road ahead would be long and full of challenges, he was ready for whatever came next. Scout padded over to Jack, his tail wagging, as if urging him to move forward. Jack stood, taking a deep breath. It was time to keep going. There was more work to be done, and he knew that the future of the hotel, and his own, depended on it. As he looked up at the building once again, Jack felt a renewed sense of purpose. The hotel was no longer just a building. It was a place of hope, a place where dreams could be rebuilt, one step at a time. Weeks passed, and the transformation of the hotel continued at a steady pace. Jack had poured his heart and soul into restoring the building, and with every completed project, the hotel started to look less like a forgotten relic and more like the thriving establishment it had once been. The walls were painted, the floors scrubbed, and the plumbing fixed. The grand dining room was no longer covered in dust, and the chandeliers, though aged, sparkled once again. The kitchen was fully operational, and Jack had even begun to take reservations for a small, intimate gathering. People from the town were coming to see the progress, offering their help and suggestions, and the hotel slowly began to feel like a living, breathing place once again. But even as the hotel came together, Jack's mind often wandered. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to the hotel than just the work he was doing. Something hidden, something deep within the walls, waiting to be discovered. It had been nagging at him ever since he found that strange key and stepped inside. One afternoon, as Jack was going over some of the old blueprints of the hotel, he noticed a detail he hadn't before, an area marked in red that didn't seem to match anything else in the building. It was an underground chamber beneath the hotel's foundation, a room that had been sealed off long before Edward had left the place. Jack's curiosity was piqued. He had to find out what was hidden there. That evening, after the workers had left for the day, Jack took a flashlight and ventured down into the basement. Scout, ever faithful, followed closely behind. The basement was musty, with old wooden beams supporting the floor above. The walls were lined with cobwebs, and the air was thick with the scent of mildew. Jack walked slowly, scanning the floor for any signs of what might be hidden. After a few moments, his eyes fell on a section of the floor that looked slightly different from the rest. It was made of rougher stone, and there was a faint outline of a door hidden beneath layers of dust and dirt. Jack knelt down, wiping away the grime, and found a rusty iron handle embedded in the floor. With a sense of anticipation building inside him, he grabbed the handle and pulled. The door creaked open, revealing a set of stone steps that descended into darkness. Jack hesitated for a moment, his heart racing. He had no idea what he was about to uncover, but something deep inside told him it was important. With Scout by his side, Jack stepped into the darkness, the beam of his flashlight cutting through the blackness. The stairs were narrow and steep, leading down into what felt like the bowels of the earth. The air grew colder as they descended, and Jack's breath echoed in the silence. When they reached the bottom, Jack's flashlight revealed a large, dimly lit room. It was unlike anything he had seen in the hotel above. The walls were lined with old, weathered shelves, each holding boxes and crates covered in dust. There was an eerie stillness to the place, as if it had been untouched for decades. In the center of the room was a large wooden chest, old and worn, but it seemed out of place in the otherwise unremarkable space. Jack approached the chest, his pulse quickening. This was it, the moment he had been waiting for. He knelt down and slowly opened the chest. Inside, instead of the expected clutter, he found something entirely different. A stack of old documents, yellowed with age, sat neatly inside. The papers were tied together with a fraying string, and as Jack pulled them out, he could see that they were detailed records, maps, and ledgers. Everything related to the hotel's original construction and its history. But there was more. As Jack flipped through the papers, he found a document that made his heart stop. A deed, an official property transfer that showed the hotel's true origins. The hotel had not just been a business. It had once been part of a vast family fortune, one that had been hidden away for generations. The name at the top of the deed was familiar. It was Edward's family name. But there was something strange about the document. It mentioned a secret inheritance, one that had been left for a descendant who could restore the hotel to its former glory. Jack's hands trembled as he read the words. This was it, the answer to the mystery that had been haunting him. The hotel wasn't just a chance to rebuild his life. It was a key to something much larger, something connected to a legacy long forgotten. But as Jack looked closer at the map included with the papers, he realized there was even more to uncover. The map was a blueprint for an area beneath the hotel that had never been explored, and it pointed to something that had been hidden for years. The secrets of the hotel were far from over, and Jack knew that he had only just begun to scratch the surface. He felt a renewed sense of purpose. The hotel was no longer just a project. It was a mission, one that he was now deeply committed to. As Jack left the underground chamber, he knew that the future of the hotel had taken on a whole new meaning. It wasn't just about restoring the building. It was about unlocking the secrets of the past and discovering what lay hidden beneath the surface. With Scout by his side, Jack was ready for whatever came next. Jack stood there, the deed and map in his hands, feeling as if the weight of the hotel had doubled. He had thought he was simply restoring a forgotten building, but now he realized it was more than that. It was a piece of history, one tied to a family legacy that spanned generations. The documents in his hands spoke of something far greater than he had ever imagined. The map was detailed, showing not just the underground chambers he had already explored, but also another hidden section beneath the hotel, far deeper than he had dared to go. It was marked in bold red ink, as if someone had wanted to ensure that no one could miss it. His pulse quickened as he realized that this could be the treasure he had been seeking, the reason why he had been drawn to this place. It wasn't just about the hotel. It was about uncovering something buried long ago. Jack folded the papers carefully and placed them in his jacket pocket. With Scout by his side, he headed back upstairs, his mind racing with the possibilities. The storm had passed, but the air still felt thick with mystery, as if the hotel itself were holding its breath, waiting for him to unlock its final secret. The following morning, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that he needed to go deeper, that the key to the hotel's past lay somewhere beneath his feet. He stood in the lobby, staring at the floor, where the map had indicated a hidden passage. He had repaired most of the hotel, but this one area, the place marked in red, was still untouched, still shrouded in mystery. He had no choice but to follow the map. Jack made his way to the back of the hotel, where the old servants' quarters had once been. The area had been neglected for years, the floorboards creaking beneath his feet as he walked. It was quiet, too quiet, the air heavy with dust. The map indicated that the passage was hidden beneath a section of the floor here, and Jack's eyes narrowed as he began searching. It didn't take long before he found it. A section of the floor that seemed out of place, just slightly higher than the surrounding boards. He knelt down, feeling around the edges, and found a loose panel. With a little effort, he pried it up, revealing a set of narrow stairs leading down into the darkness below. Jack hesitated for a moment, the weight of the decision pressing on him. But he had come this far, and he knew there was no turning back now. He grabbed his flashlight, turned it on, and descended into the unknown. Scout followed closely behind, his instincts alert. The air down here was cold, and the smell of mildew grew stronger as they moved further into the darkness. Jack's footsteps echoed in the silence, the beam of his flashlight casting long shadows on the walls. As he descended, he felt a growing sense of anticipation, the feeling that he was about to uncover something that would change everything. The stairs creaked beneath his weight as they led him deeper into the earth. When he reached the bottom, Jack found himself standing in a large, cavernous room. The walls were lined with shelves, some filled with old crates, and others completely empty. It was different from the other rooms he had discovered. There was something oddly serene about this place, as if it had been preserved untouched for generations. In the center of the room stood a large wooden chest, its surface worn and scratched with age. Jack's heart raced as he approached it, knowing that whatever was inside could hold the answers to everything he had been searching for. He knelt down, slowly lifted the heavy lid, and found, to his surprise, not gold or jewels, but something far more valuable. More documents, old records, and books, each one carefully preserved and tied together with fraying leather straps. Jack carefully removed the first stack and began flipping through the pages. The first few were business ledgers, names, dates, and transactions. But as he dug deeper, he found something far more intriguing. There were blueprints of the hotel, but these were different from the ones he had seen before. These detailed areas of the building he had never noticed, including rooms that were never mentioned in any of the records he had come across. There was a room marked as the vault, located in the heart of the hotel. Jack's breath caught in his throat. The vault. He had never heard of such a room, yet here it was, on the old blueprints, hidden away from the rest of the building. The map seemed to be pointing him toward it, as if the final piece of the puzzle was right under his feet. He quickly scanned the other papers, hoping for more clues, and found a letter dated many years ago. It was written by Edward's grandfather, the original owner of the hotel. The letter spoke of a secret inheritance, a treasure hidden in the hotel, meant only for those who had the will to restore it to its full potential. Jack's heart pounded. He had uncovered the truth. This hotel wasn't just a building. It was a key to a family fortune, and the vault was the final piece of the legacy. It was as if fate had led him here, to this moment, to uncover the mystery that had been buried for generations. He tucked the letter and the blueprints into his jacket and stood up, taking one last look around the room. He had a new goal now, a new purpose. The vault was waiting, and Jack knew he was the one, meant to find it. With Scout by his side, Jack left the chamber and made his way back upstairs. As he climbed the stairs, he couldn't help but feel that the hotel was no longer just a place to stay. It was a living, breathing part of his destiny, and he was ready to uncover its final secret. As Jack stood in the dimly lit hallway of the hotel, the weight of the map and the blueprint still fresh in his hands, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was on the verge of something incredible. The vault. He had read about it in the old records, hidden beneath the very heart of the hotel, a place that no one had dared to explore for generations. It was clear now that this place was meant to hold something of great importance, something valuable, something that could change everything. But the question remained, where was the entrance to the vault? The map he had found was old, the ink faded in some places, but it was still legible. The vault was clearly marked beneath the lobby, but the layout didn't make it obvious how to access it. Jack felt his pulse quicken as he studied the blueprint again. He was so close now, he could feel it. The building itself seemed to be holding its breath, waiting for him to find the final secret. Scout, as if sensing the shift in the air, sat by Jack's side, his amber eyes focused, alert. Jack looked down at the dog and patted his head gently. "We're getting close, buddy," he muttered. The two of them had been through a lot together, and Jack knew that this place, the hotel, was more than just a physical restoration. It was a journey, and one that would shape the rest of his life. Jack continued to pace, examining the faded blueprint. The vault, according to the map, was not directly beneath the lobby, but instead, it was hidden behind a false wall in the back corridor. It made sense. The hotel's original builders had been meticulous, leaving no trace of what lay beneath. Jack's eyes narrowed with determination as he made his way toward the back. The hotel's wooden floors creaked beneath his boots, and the dim light flickered from the overhead fixtures. He had become so familiar with the creaks and groans of the old building that it almost felt like it was speaking to him, guiding him toward his destination. The corridor at the back of the hotel was quiet, too quiet. Jack felt a chill creep up his spine as he approached a section of the wall that seemed slightly out of place. It was there, marked on the map, a small, inconspicuous door hidden behind an old tapestry. The wall looked solid enough, but Jack could see a faint outline where the entrance had been sealed over time. This was it. He reached out and brushed his fingers against the wall, feeling the texture shift beneath his touch. There was no doubt now. This was the entrance to the vault. Taking a deep breath, Jack pressed against the wall, pushing with all his strength. It moved, ever so slightly at first, and then with a groan, the wall gave way. A hidden door revealed itself, leading into the darkness below. Jack's heart raced. He wasn't sure what he would find down there, but he knew it was something that would change everything. He grabbed his flashlight and, with Scout at his side, stepped through the door. The air down here was thick with the smell of old stone and dust. The beam of his flashlight swept across the narrow stone staircase that spiraled downwards, the steps worn from years of disuse. It was colder than upstairs, and the walls were damp with moisture. Jack could feel the weight of history pressing down on him, but he wasn't afraid. This was his moment, his chance to uncover the truth about the hotel, about Edward's legacy, and about what had been hidden for so long. As they descended further into the depths, Jack couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. The vault was no ordinary place. It was something ancient, something that had been sealed away to protect its secrets. When they reached the bottom of the stairs, Jack found himself standing in a large chamber. The space was far bigger than he had imagined, its stone walls stretching far beyond what his flashlight could reveal. The air felt heavy with time, as if the room itself had been frozen in history. But there was something even more striking. The shelves lining the walls, filled with old books, scrolls, and leather-bound journals. It was a library, hidden beneath the hotel. Jack's eyes widened as he approached one of the shelves. The books looked ancient, some with gold leaf lettering on the spines, others so worn that the titles were barely legible. He ran his fingers over the leather bindings, feeling a deep sense of reverence for the history they held. These were not ordinary books. These were records of the hotel's past, of Edward's ancestors, and of the fortune that had been built and hidden away for generations. But there was something else, something that caught Jack's eye. In the center of the room, placed carefully on a pedestal, was a small, ornate chest. It was old, far older than anything else in the room, and it was intricately designed with patterns that Jack didn't recognize. His heart skipped a beat as he approached the chest. This, he thought, this was what he had been searching for. He reached out and slowly lifted the lid. Inside, instead of treasure, he found something even more extraordinary, a collection of old, faded photographs. They were pictures of the hotel, of Edward's family, and of the people who had worked there long ago. But the most surprising part was the final photograph. It showed a man, one of Edward's ancestors, standing in front of the hotel, but he was holding something in his hands. A key. The key to the entire legacy. Jack's hands trembled as he stared at the photograph, realizing that the key to the hotel's past was now within his reach. The final piece of the puzzle had been revealed. He knew what he had to do next. With Scout by his side, Jack knew that he was not just restoring a building. He was unlocking a history that had been hidden away for far too long, and the future of the hotel was now in his hands. Jack stood in the dim light of the vault, the chest now open in front of him, the photograph of Edward's ancestor and the mysterious key resting in his hands. The old key, delicate and ornate, seemed almost too important to touch. as if it held the final answer to everything that had remained hidden in the hotel for generations. The photograph was just as revealing. The ancestor, standing proudly in front of the hotel, held the key as if it were the key to the world itself. Jack felt a weight in his chest as he studied the picture, realizing that the key wasn't just symbolic, it was part of the legacy. This was the moment he had been working toward, the point where everything he had done in the hotel, all the hours of work, all the sweat, had led him. He was holding the last piece of the puzzle, the one thing that could tie together the family's secret and his own future. The vault, with its shelves of old records, books, and now the key, was no longer just a room. It was a place of revelation. Jack carefully placed the photograph and the key into his jacket pocket. He knew there was one more thing to do. He had to find the real purpose of this key, the final piece of Edward's family legacy that had remained hidden for so long. The photo had shown the key in the hands of the ancestor, but where did it belong? What did it open? With Scout by his side, Jack carefully made his way back to the main floor of the hotel. The feeling of excitement mixed with anxiety was overwhelming. He couldn't shake the idea that the key might open something in the hotel itself, something that was just as significant as what he had already uncovered. The hotel had always felt like it was hiding something, but now he knew the truth. It was more than just a physical building. It was a symbol, a piece of history waiting to be unlocked. Back on the main floor, Jack returned to the lobby, which had taken shape over the past few weeks, restored and cleaned, but still holding on to its old, worn charm. The old grand piano sat in the corner, its once grand sound now lost in the stillness, but Jack could hear the faint echo of its past. The elegant chandeliers, polished and hanging high above, now brought a glimmer of light into the space, but there was still something missing. Jack stood in the middle of the room, the key still tucked securely in his pocket, and felt a strange sense of recognition. There was something about the way the room was laid out, something about the architecture that felt deliberate, as if it were designed to hold a secret. The answer had to be here, somewhere in the heart of the hotel. His eyes scanned the room, lingering on the grand staircase that led up to the second floor. He had explored every inch of this place, but there was still one area he hadn't dared to go. The door at the far end of the room, a heavy wooden door that had been locked and untouched since he had arrived, stood as if it were waiting. This was it, Jack thought. This was where the key belonged. He walked over to the door, his heart pounding in his chest. The handle was cold under his hand as he turned it. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a hidden room on the other side. It was small, with a low ceiling and no windows, but the air inside felt different, charged with a strange energy, as if this place had been sealed off for a reason. In the center of the room was a pedestal, much like the one he had found in the vault, but this one was different. There was a slot in the pedestal, just the right size for the key. Jack hesitated for a moment before he stepped forward. This was it, the moment he had been waiting for. With a steady hand, Jack placed the key into the slot, feeling the smooth metal against his fingers. The instant he turned it, the pedestal shifted, and the floor beneath his feet began to rumble. The sound was deep, like the hotel itself was waking up. Jack's breath caught in his throat as the pedestal slowly sank into the ground, revealing a hidden staircase beneath it. The stairs were narrow and steep, leading down into the darkness, but Jack didn't hesitate. He knew this was the final step. The staircase led into a cavernous space, dimly lit by flickering lanterns hanging from the ceiling. The air smelled of earth and stone, heavy with the scent of something ancient. As Jack descended, his mind raced with possibilities. What had Edward's family hidden down here? What was so important that it had to be concealed for all these years? When he reached the bottom, Jack found himself standing in a large, open chamber. The walls were lined with shelves, but they were empty. In the center of the room, there was a large stone altar. On top of the altar lay a single, old chest, much like the one Jack had found earlier, but this one was different. This chest was sealed, with intricate carvings etched into its surface. The carvings seemed to tell a story of a family that had built something great and then hidden it away. Jack felt a deep connection to this moment, as if he were standing at the crossroads of the past and the future. He knew that this chest, this final secret, would change everything. He approached the altar slowly, his hands trembling with anticipation. The chest was heavy, but he lifted it with ease, placing it gently on the pedestal. He could hear the echoes of his footsteps in the chamber as he reached for the chest's lock. The key had to fit. With a deep breath, Jack inserted the key into the lock, and with a click, the chest opened. Inside, there was no gold, no jewels, only a set of old documents and another key, this one different from the first. The documents were records of a family fortune, yes, but there was more. The second key was the true inheritance, the one that would unlock the family's legacy for the future. Jack stood there, holding the key, knowing that the real journey was just beginning. Jack stood there, the chest now open before him, the documents spread out on the stone altar. His heart raced as he carefully examined the papers inside. They were old, the ink faded and the edges frayed, but the words were clear enough. This was it, the family's true legacy. The fortune, the history, everything that had been hidden for generations. But there was something even more pressing. The second key, the one that had been tucked into the chest, was unlike the first. It was larger, its metal intricately carved with symbols Jack didn't recognize. As he turned it over in his hand, he realized this was the key that would unlock something even greater. It wasn't just the inheritance of wealth, but something more profound, something that had been guarded and protected for centuries. He stared down at the key for a moment, feeling its weight in his palm. The moment he'd been waiting for was finally here, but he didn't feel ready. He knew, deep down, that this next step would change everything. The legacy he had uncovered was no longer just about restoring the hotel or unlocking its secrets. It was about what came next, the future, the responsibility he now held. As he gathered the documents and the second key, Jack felt the immense pressure of it all. The hotel had always been more than just a building to him. It had represented a fresh start, a chance to rebuild. But now, with the discovery of the family legacy, he realized that the hotel itself was only part of the story. The real journey lay ahead. Jack tucked the papers and the second key into his jacket pocket and began to make his way out of the chamber. Scout followed closely behind, his usual calm demeanor seemingly in tune with the gravity of the situation. As they ascended the staircase and emerged back into the main hotel, Jack's thoughts swirled with the possibilities. What exactly was the second key for? What was hidden, waiting for him to find? He didn't know yet, but he felt a deep sense of urgency. The answers were within reach, and he was determined to find them. Back in the lobby, Jack paced for a moment, the weight of the key still heavy in his hand. He glanced around at the hotel, its beautiful, restored rooms, its history, and wondered what more it had been hiding. He knew there had to be more. The blueprint of the hotel had indicated that there were areas yet to be explored, and the second key was the final piece to the puzzle. It was the key to unlocking not just the secrets of the past, but the future of the hotel itself. Jack felt as though he were standing at the edge of something enormous, something beyond his understanding. The hotel was more than a legacy. It was a symbol of rebirth, of potential waiting to be realized. He had started with the simple goal of restoring a building, but now he understood that this was bigger than him. This was about honoring the past, while building something that would last for generations to come. He stood in the center of the lobby, the grand staircase rising before him, and knew what he had to do. He had to find the place the second key belonged, the room, the secret location that would unlock the final piece of the legacy. Without hesitation, Jack set off toward the back of the hotel. He knew there was an area he hadn't explored yet, an old storage room near the kitchen that had always seemed off limits. He had avoided it, not sure what he would find. But now, with the second key in his hand, it seemed like the right place to start. As he approached the storage room, Jack's heart rate quickened. This room had always been a mystery, hidden behind a heavy door that had been locked and sealed for years. Jack reached out and turned the handle, the door creaking open with a groan. Inside, the room was dark, filled with crates and old furniture, the air thick with the smell of aged wood. But as Jack stepped further into the room, his eyes caught something unusual. Against the far wall, a large, ornate mirror hung in a wooden frame. It was unlike any mirror Jack had ever seen before. It was old, its glass cloudy and tarnished, but there was something about it, something that drew him in. As he approached the mirror, Jack noticed a small, hidden compartment in the wooden frame, just beneath the glass. His pulse quickened as he reached out and pressed it. The compartment clicked open, revealing a small, dusty drawer. Jack carefully pulled the drawer out, and inside, there was a slot, just the right size for the second key. With trembling hands, Jack inserted the key into the slot and turned it. The mirror shifted, the glass separating from the frame to reveal a hidden passage behind it. Jack's breath caught in his throat. This was it, the final secret. Without thinking, he stepped through the opening, Scout close behind, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The passage led down a narrow, stone corridor, and at the end of it, Jack could see a faint light shining through a crack in the wall. He approached cautiously, his heart pounding in his chest. As he reached the end of the passage, he placed his hand on the wall and pushed. It gave way easily, revealing a hidden chamber that was bathed in soft, golden light. The room was small, but it was filled with objects, artifacts, books, and documents, everything that had been hidden away for generations. This was the heart of the legacy, the place where everything had been kept safe until the right person arrived. Jack stepped inside, his eyes wide with amazement. He had uncovered the final secret of the hotel. It was more than a building. It was a treasure trove of history, a legacy that would shape the future of his life and the future of the hotel. Jack stood in the hidden chamber, his eyes scanning the room filled with artifacts, books, and documents, each item a piece of history, each one holding a part of the story that had been buried for generations. This was the heart of the legacy. It was clear now that the hotel was not just a place to stay, but a treasure trove of history, holding within its walls the key to a fortune, a family's past, and perhaps even a future that was yet to be fully realized. Jack felt a deep sense of awe as he walked deeper into the room. The golden light that illuminated the space seemed to pulse with an almost magical energy, as if the very air in the room had been touched by something greater than him. The walls were lined with shelves filled with ancient scrolls, maps, and leather-bound books that looked centuries old. Each one seemed to whisper its own story, waiting for someone to unlock its secrets. Jack knew that this was the culmination of everything he had worked for: the hotel, the restoration, the key to the vault. And now he stood here, holding the answers to a family's legacy that had been forgotten by time. He reached out and touched one of the books, its leather cover soft and worn from years of neglect. As his fingers brushed the surface, a strange feeling washed over him, a sense that he was connected to the past, to the generations that had come before him. The history of the hotel, of Edward's family, was now his to carry. His heart raced as he opened the book. The pages inside were filled with detailed records, but one page in particular caught his eye. It was a journal entry, dated many years ago, written by Edward's great-grandfather. The entry spoke of a hidden inheritance, one that had been set aside for a descendant who could restore the hotel to its former glory. The fortune was not just in wealth, but in knowledge, in the preservation of the family's legacy. Jack could hardly believe what he was reading. The family's wealth had not been stored in gold or jewels, but in the history and knowledge that had been passed down through the generations. The true inheritance was the preservation of this place, the hotel itself, its history, and the story of a family that had once been at the heart of a thriving community. The key he had found, the second key, was not just a key to a vault or a room. It was a key to unlocking the potential of the hotel, and by extension, his own future. He could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on him, but also the promise of a new beginning. Jack closed the book and placed it carefully back on the shelf. He wasn't just a caretaker anymore. He was part of something bigger, part of a story that had been unfolding for generations. The hotel was no longer just a building to restore. It was a living, breathing piece of history, and it was now his responsibility to honor that legacy. Scout stood quietly by his side, as if understanding the gravity of the moment. Jack smiled at his loyal companion and patted his head. "We've got work to do, buddy," he said softly. But before he could leave the chamber, his eyes caught something else. A small wooden box, tucked away in the corner of the room, partially hidden behind a stack of old documents. It wasn't large, but it was intricately carved, its surface smooth and polished despite its age. Jack approached the box, curiosity piqued once more. He knelt down and opened it, finding another set of papers inside. These were different from the others. They were newer, written in a hand Jack didn't recognize. As he read through the papers, his heart skipped a beat. They were instructions, plans for the future of the hotel, for the legacy that had been passed down through the family. The documents spoke of a vision for the hotel, one that involved not just restoring the building, but transforming it into something more, a place that would serve the community, a center for learning, and a beacon for the family's values of integrity and service. The plans outlined how the hotel would be used to help those in need, to provide shelter and support for the less fortunate, and to create a lasting legacy of kindness and generosity. It was clear now that the family's wealth wasn't just about material things. It was about the impact they could have on the world, about the lives they could touch and the difference they could make. Jack sat back, absorbing the weight of what he had just discovered. The hotel was no longer just a business. It was a mission to preserve not only the building but the values that had guided Edward's family for generations. Jack stood up slowly, taking a deep breath. He knew what he had to do. The future of the hotel, the future of this legacy, depended on him now. He wasn't alone in this. He had the community behind him. He had the knowledge and the vision, and most importantly, he had the drive to make it happen. Scout looked up at him, tail wagging slightly, as if urging him forward. Jack smiled, knowing that this was just the beginning. The hotel would not only be restored, it would be transformed into something that could serve a greater purpose, just as the family had intended. As Jack left the chamber, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead would be challenging, but he was ready. This was his chance to not only honor the past, but to build a future where the hotel's legacy would live on for generations to come. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Jack, with Scout at his side, was no longer just a man restoring a hotel. He had become the steward of a legacy, a mission that had been passed down through generations. The plans he had discovered in the hidden chamber set the course for what the hotel would become. It would no longer be just a place for people to stay. It would be a sanctuary, a beacon for the community, and a center for learning and service. The vision was clear, but it would take hard work, commitment, and a deep belief in the family's values to bring it to life. Jack began by rallying the community. He reached out to those who had helped him in the past, people who had offered their skills, their time, and their support during the restoration process. Together, they formed a team, united in their common purpose. They worked day and night, fixing the final touches, renovating rooms, and preparing the building for its new role. The hotel's new purpose wasn't just about restoring its grandeur. It was about ensuring that the legacy of kindness, integrity, and service would live on. As the hotel began to take shape, word of its transformation spread throughout the town. People from all walks of life began to take notice. The hotel, once a symbol of neglect, was now becoming a place of hope. People started to show up, offering their support, volunteering their time, and contributing in ways Jack hadn't expected. The atmosphere inside the hotel had shifted as well. There was a renewed energy, a sense of purpose that hung in the air. It was no longer just a building. It had become a living, breathing testament to the power of community and the importance of preserving the past while embracing the future. Jack often found himself in the lobby, talking to visitors, explaining the vision, and sharing the story of how the hotel had come to life again. There was something deeply fulfilling about the way the community had rallied behind the project. He had given the hotel new life, but in doing so, it had given him a renewed sense of purpose. One day, as Jack stood in the lobby overseeing the final stages of the renovation, Edward appeared at the door. The elderly man had been a constant presence throughout the entire process, offering advice, wisdom, and encouragement. Jack smiled and waved him over. "How's it looking?" Edward asked, his voice tinged with pride. "It's more than I could have imagined," Jack replied, his eyes scanning the room. "The hotel is almost ready to open its doors, but it's not just the building that's changed. It's the whole community. We're all part of something bigger now." Edward nodded, his eyes gleaming with emotion. "I knew you were the right person to restore this place. But what you've done, it's not just about the hotel. You've revived the heart of this town." Jack felt a lump form in his throat. He had never imagined that restoring a hotel could lead to something so meaningful. "It's not just me," Jack said, glancing around at the people working together. "It's everyone who's helped, everyone who's believed in this vision." Edward's smile widened. "That's the true spirit of this place. It's always been about more than just the bricks and mortar. It's about the people, the connections, and the impact it has on those who come through its doors." As the day of the grand opening approached, Jack found himself reflecting on everything that had brought him here. The hotel was ready. The legacy was in place. But it wasn't just about opening the doors and letting people in. It was about opening the doors to the future, to new possibilities, and to a new chapter in the story of the hotel and the town. The morning of the grand opening, the hotel was bustling with activity. The rooms were ready, the staff was prepared, and the excitement in the air was palpable. The guests began to arrive, each one greeted with warmth and hospitality as they stepped through the doors of the newly renovated hotel. The lobby was filled with smiles and laughter, the sound of conversations, and the clinking of glasses. Jack stood in the corner, watching it all unfold. It was everything he had hoped for, everything he had worked for. As he looked around, he saw Edward approaching, a look of pride on his face. Jack walked over to him, and they exchanged a look of understanding. This was it, the moment they had both waited for. "You did it, Jack," Edward said, his voice filled with pride. Jack smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment that went beyond words. "We did it," Jack replied. "This place isn't just a hotel. It's a symbol of what happens when a community comes together, when we believe in something bigger than ourselves." Edward nodded, his eyes misty with emotion. "I'm proud of you, Jack. This place, it's yours now. And I know it will continue to grow, to touch lives, just as it was always meant to." As Jack looked around one last time, he felt a deep sense of peace. The hotel had been restored, but it was no longer just about the building. It was about the legacy that had been passed down through the generations, the values that had guided the family and the community, and the future that was now within reach. The doors were open, and Jack knew that the journey had only just begun. The days that followed the grand opening were filled with an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. The hotel, once a forgotten relic, now stood as a vibrant hub for the community. It was more than just a place to stay. It had become a center for connection, a symbol of resilience, and a testament to the power of unity. Jack couldn't have been prouder of how far they had come. The hotel was thriving, the guests were content, and the town's atmosphere had shifted. The once quiet streets were now alive with activity, as people from all walks of life came to experience the warmth and hospitality that had become the hallmark of the hotel. Jack had worked tirelessly to restore not just the building, but the spirit of the place, and he had succeeded. Yet, despite the hotel's success, there were moments when Jack found himself reflecting on the deeper meaning of the journey he had undertaken. It wasn't just the bricks and mortar that had been restored. It was the connection between the people and the history of the hotel that had truly been brought back to life. Jack spent his days meeting with guests, overseeing operations, and ensuring that the hotel continued to run smoothly. But he also found himself sitting in the quiet of the lobby late at night, thinking about the legacy that he had now inherited. It wasn't just about the past, it was about what he could do with the future. One evening, as Jack walked through the hotel's grand lobby, he spotted a familiar face. Edward was sitting in one of the corner chairs, a cup of tea in his hands, looking out the window. He had been a constant presence throughout the hotel's restoration, offering advice and sharing stories of the past. But tonight, Jack noticed something different in his eyes, a sense of peace, as if he were finally able to see his family's dream fulfilled. Jack approached him, a smile on his face. "How's everything?" Jack asked, taking a seat beside him. Edward smiled back, his eyes twinkling with pride. "Everything's perfect, Jack. I never imagined I'd live to see this day, but I'm so glad I did." Jack nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for the man who had been there from the beginning. "It's not just me, Edward. It's all of us, this community, this place. You've helped bring it all back to life." Edward shook his head gently. "No, Jack. You've done something I could never have done. You've brought the hotel back to its heart. This place was always about the people, and you've made sure it stays that way." Jack sat quietly for a moment, looking around the room. The hotel was full of life. Guests were laughing, talking, and enjoying their stay. The lobby, once empty and dusty, now felt warm and alive. It was as if the hotel had become a reflection of the community itself, full of energy, connection, and hope. "I've been thinking a lot," Jack began, his voice soft but thoughtful, "about what comes next. I've done what I set out to do, restore the hotel, honor the legacy. But now, I feel like there's something more I need to do, something that can carry this forward." Edward looked at him curiously. "What do you mean?" I think it's time we take the next step, Jack said. The hotel is more than just a place to stay now. It's a place for people to come together, to connect, to share. We've already seen the impact it's had on the town. But I want to do more, something that will ensure that the hotel's legacy continues for generations to come. Edward listened intently, his expression thoughtful. Jack continued, I've been thinking about opening the hotel up for community events, workshops, classes, performances. I want it to be a place where people can not only stay, but also learn and grow. I want the hotel to be a hub for creativity, for people to come together and share ideas. We have the space, the history, and the community to make it happen. Edward's eyes brightened, and he nodded slowly. Jack, that's exactly what this place was meant to be. It was always more than just a hotel. It was a place for people to find connection and inspiration. What you're suggesting, it's perfect. Jack smiled, feeling a sense of excitement building inside him. I want to make sure that this place keeps giving back to the community. I want it to be a place where people come to not only experience comfort, but also to be inspired. It's time to build something new, a future that honors the past while creating something even more meaningful. As the two of them sat in the quiet of the hotel, surrounded by the warmth and energy of the guests, Jack realized that his work was far from over. The hotel was no longer just a building. It was a living, breathing entity that would continue to grow and evolve. And he was ready to take it to the next level, ensuring that its legacy would continue for years to come. Edward's approval meant everything to him, and as they spoke about the future, Jack felt a sense of fulfillment wash over him. This was just the beginning. The hotel story was still being written, and Jack knew that, with the community by his side, it would be a story of hope, connection, and endless possibility. Months passed, and the hotel blossomed into the vibrant, welcoming place Jack had always dreamed of. The workshops, classes, and events had brought the community together in ways Jack hadn't anticipated. The hotel had become a place of connection and inspiration, just as he had envisioned. People came from all over, not just for the comfort of the rooms, but for the opportunity to participate in something bigger, something that honored the hotel's past while embracing the future. Jack had become not just a hotel owner, but a catalyst for change in the town. The community had rallied behind him, each person contributing in their own way, whether by offering their time, expertise, or simply by attending the events. It felt like a ripple effect, each act of kindness and support strengthening the foundation of the hotel and the town. One evening, as Jack walked through the bustling lobby, he paused to take it all in. The warmth of the place, the laughter, the conversations, it was everything he had hoped for and more. He was no longer just a man working to restore a building. He was part of a larger mission, one that had brought life back to a place that had once been forgotten. As he stood in the lobby, Edward walked up beside him, his familiar presence bringing a sense of calm. You've done it, Jack, Edward said, his voice filled with pride. This place, it's more than just a hotel now. It's become a living legacy. I never thought I'd see it, but you've brought everything to life. Jack smiled, looking around at the bustling crowd. It's not just me, Edward. It's all of us. We've built something here, together. Edward nodded, his eyes misty with emotion. That's what makes this so special. It was always about the people. The hotel may have been the vessel, but the community is what gave it its soul. Jack couldn't help but agree. He had started this journey alone, with just the key and the vision, but now, with the hotel thriving, it felt like something much bigger had been created. The work was far from over, but Jack knew the journey ahead would be different. There was a sense of fulfillment in the air, and with it, a renewed sense of purpose. The hotel had been restored, but more importantly, it had been transformed into something that would carry on for generations. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, Jack continued to watch as the hotel became a symbol of hope and renewal. It wasn't just about the past anymore. It was about the future, the legacy they were all creating together. The guests continued to come, the events grew in number, and the hotel's influence began to extend beyond the town. What had started as a place for rest had become a place for growth, a place for dreams to be shared and lives to be touched. Jack found himself thinking about the next steps. What more could they do? The community had embraced the hotel as a part of its identity, and now it was time for the hotel to give back even more. The plans were already in motion. There were talks of expanding the space for even more events, offering scholarships for local students, and creating a foundation that would ensure the legacy of the hotel lived on long after Jack was gone. The possibilities were endless, and the future seemed as bright as ever. One afternoon, as Jack sat at his desk, reflecting on how far they had come, Scout curled up at his feet, Jack felt a deep sense of contentment. The hotel had not just given him a new life. It had given the entire community a second chance. The legacy of the hotel was no longer just about the past. It was about the future, and Jack knew that the story would continue to unfold, just as it had been intended all along. As the sun set behind the hotel, casting long shadows across the grounds, Jack stood up and walked to the window. He looked out at the town that had embraced him, at the hotel that had become more than just a building. It was a beacon of hope, a symbol of what could be achieved when people came together with a shared purpose. With Scout by his side and the future ahead of him, Jack smiled. He had found his place, and the hotel had found its purpose. This was just the beginning of a new chapter, one that would carry the legacy of the hotel and its people far into the future. In this inspiring tale of resilience and community, a former soldier embarks on a life-changing journey to restore a once-forgotten hotel, uncovering family secrets, hidden treasures, and a legacy of hope. As he faces challenges and discovers the true purpose of the hotel, his story unfolds in the most unexpected of ways, weaving in themes of transformation and redemption. This is a powerful example of veteran stories that show the strength of character and the power of overcoming adversity. The hotel becomes more than just a place to stay. It is a symbol of rebirth and opportunity, where the community comes together to create something lasting. As the former soldier dedicates himself to restoring the hotel, he unravels hidden layers of his past, discovering connections to a family legacy that ties him to the hotel's future. Through his hard work and determination, the veteran builds not only a place for the community, but also a future for himself, redefining what it means to fight for something bigger than oneself. This journey is an embodiment of veteran stories that highlight the sacrifice, perseverance, and personal growth that come with taking on seemingly impossible challenges. The hotel becomes a haven, a beacon of hope for those in need, and a place of learning and connection. The legacy continues as the veteran dedicates his life to carrying forward the lessons learned, proving that, just like many other veteran stories, it is never too late to find your true purpose and make a difference in the world. With each passing day, the hotel grows stronger, just as the veteran's spirit does, leaving behind a legacy of inspiration for generations to come.